Call the meeting of the Development Committee of October 3rd to order. Roll call, please.
Member Krajewski. Member Chaplin. Here. Member Guston. Here. Member Ozog. Member Rutledge. Here. Chair Tornatori.
Here. We have a quorum. I have no remarks. I understand we have no public comment. I move to approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of September 19th. There's a motion and a second. Any corrections, additions, deletions? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and the minutes are approved. We had a regulatory. I'll entertain a motion to approve DCP 17-23, a recommendation for an approval of contract to Acela Inc. for annual subscription services for LOCMO software integration between Acela, online permitting software, and Bluebeam plan review software for a period of December 1, 2023 through November 30th, 2024 for a contract not to exceed $30,618. Motion and a second. Any questions, comments on this one? Yes. Okay.
This software, the software program obviously is for building and zoning, and so for planning. Quick question: are there elements within the program where staff can identify, hey, you submitted your plan, and we've got your application, and it's going to take 5 days for us to review it, or does the program only allow certain specific timeframes, like 20 days, 20 days, 20 days, which ends up extending and extending and extending any kind of development final permit approvals?
So this particular software that's on the agenda today is simply for the markup tool that we use to review the documents, to be able to open them up and put comments actually on it, because it's all electronic.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're talking about, the system doesn't actually give a date that it has to, we can assign a date that it should be done by. And most typical small residential projects are less than 10 days. And then commercial days, we shoot for 15 to 20. So that's when the first review comments come back. If it's approvable, it'll be approved at that point. If not, the applicant would get their comments back electronically, and then they'd have to resubmit. So it doesn't actually assign a firm date that, like in 5 days or 10 days, like you're asking.
Does every resubmittal make another 20 day? I've seen that, and that's why I'm wondering.
Typically, we try and do them sooner than that. Depending on what the project is, if it's a large commercial project, it goes out to an outside vendor, and those we can't necessarily expedite without an additional fee. If it's internal, we try and turn them around faster than that. And it also depends on the new software. So, for example, if it was approved through zoning, when it gets resubmitted, it won't go back to zoning. If nothing changed on the outside of the building, but you just had to make an amendment to the plans on the inside, it would only go back to the plans examiner. So that would be much faster review, and it would get charged right.
And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because we as a board are looking at, more housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, all of this kind of stuff. And if we have systems in place that are going to slow things down, that we're evidencing and seeing now, we probably want to get on top of that.
Yeah, and I think we've already committed to that with the affordable housing program, that we'll try and push those through as a priority.
So more of a fast track.
Yeah.
And we probably want to do it with a lot of things, because that's not the only one.
Well, they run to a lot of different people. So you've got the health department, who's outside our control with their time frame, but it goes to drainage, it goes to zoning, it goes to the building and plumbing inspectors. So there's a big group of people that do review. I think that's where some of the delays sometimes happen outside our control. If you've got well and septic, it goes to the health department, and they're on a different review program than we are. And if it's a stormwater management permit, then it's a much longer program than we are.
2020.
Okay. Any other questions regarding this matter? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to action items. Before we get into AHR 2-23, we have Principal CMAP here, Jonathan Birch, going to talk to us a bit on our proposed resolution and memorandum of understanding with CMAP regarding the notice of funding opportunity on the $85 million federal grant. Jonathan, welcome.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk through that a little bit. Again, Jonathan Burdish from Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. I need to advance slides. Do I need a clicker or should I just say advance the slides?
Say next slide.
Say
Next
next
slide.
slide.
Delightful. Awesome. Well, thanks again for spending a little bit of time this morning. You've been really great working with your staff so far to discuss the idea of open floor. Yep. All right, going for a grant opportunity that HUD has put out there called Pro Housing. I think it is especially timely. What is it all about? It's about removing the barriers that exist already to affordable housing production, particularly focusing on increasing housing production rates and thinking about how that has downstream effects for lowering costs for families. I'm sure if you've been following housing issues at all at a regional or national level, you've probably seen articles in newspapers or other sources talking about the way the building code, zoning, other policies can slow housing production overall and have cost additive features for families as well. And so this program by HUD is really focused on that. The details about it, they have a pool of $85 million out there. It is a national competition. Applications are due at the end of October, but more functionally, we have to put it out there for a public comment period. A potential regional application out for a public comment period, so it's due much sooner than that. In order to be able to do that, they are looking at about 20 awards across the nation with a min size of $1 million and a maximum of $10 million. Next slide. Of, I think, a special note, HUD is looking at what they're calling priority areas for the grant opportunity. Those are depicted in green on the map. They have identified both counties and municipalities. So on the big part of the map, you see the municipalities that are specifically identified using the metrics that HUD came up with to determine priority areas. On the smaller map in the upper right-hand corner, you see the green counties. Not a whole of the region has been included, but large portions of it, including DuPage County. Probably no surprise to you all knowing your county so well. Next slide. This is actually timely from a CMAP for us. I'll spend a moment to be a little selfish here. It's a good moment for CMAP. One of the things that we have been authorized to do under the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act that came out a couple years ago is specifically thinking more deeply about the role of housing and metropolitan planning organizations and regional planning. It includes, for the first time, the words housing somewhere in the MPO statute, which gives us more time and space and actual statutory authority to think about the linkages between the transportation planning that CMAP does as part of our roles as a metropolitan planning organization, along with housing, which is really no surprise, right? Good proactive housing planning is good transportation planning, and we're excited to be able to think about what those linkages are. They include the option to develop a regional housing coordination plan, and rather than pursuing that route, we want to talk to you about this grant opportunity today. Next slide. Two of the priority areas for CMAP's work, just thinking about the work that we've done in the past, what was included in the regional plan on 2050, along with the issues and topics that we hear frequently as we're out and about across the region working on housing issues, is two big buckets. One is about developing awareness specifically around housing issues more broadly and the economic benefits of having diverse, affordable, and connected housing. Next slide. And providing technical support to communities, to counties, to others to actually be able to operationalize that. It's one thing for folks to know about it. It's another thing to be able to provide assistance to communities when thinking about what that means in terms of the local permitting, codes, amendments, other things that they might be considering. Next slide. So with that in mind, with this grant opportunity on the street, CMAP spent time chatting with county representatives from across the region throughout August and into September about the potential opportunity to go for this grant. One of the things we heard was, one, folks were excited about CMAP to take the lead on trying to pull everybody together. There was broad interest from all counties except for Keppel in trying to do a housing readiness framework. And I'm going to spend a minute to describe what that is, which is trying to think about that it's not just about high-level recommendations, but really being able to give communities a checklist for what it would mean in this particular case in a given county to be housing ready. And we understand that even inside of counties, there's variance in terms of like different communities and different issues. So there may be some variance there as well. Like some types of communities may have this on their checklist and other types of communities may have that on their checklist. With the ultimate result being, okay, we can be able to go down the line and say, a community has these 15 items, 20 items on their checklist. Can we then help them be able to check those off? And this is what we're calling a housing readiness framework or housing readiness plan. There's a lot of work that's already going on. We have a lot to build on that DuPage County has already been doing, right? You have an existing subcommittee of the board that is meeting regularly to talk about these sorts of issues. You already have allocated money to work with the Grounded Solutions Network. You are not alone traveling down this path. You have co-travelers in other counties. Lake County has already contracted with Valerie Kretschmer to do a affordable housing market study, which they are in the process of finishing up right now. They have started convening a similar sort of group at the, at the sort of urging of their county board as well. Kane is having, and McHenry are having similar sorts of conversations, also spurred on by their elected leadership. Will County is getting ready to redo their land resource management plan, their sort of county comp plan, for the first time in 15, 20 years. And that gives a good opportunity as well to be able to integrate housing into that for the first time. And they actually, prior to COVID in like 2018, 2019, were having regular conversations as well about these sorts of issues. They had a modern housing subcommittee of their board that was also talking about these sorts of topics. And finally, we noticed a lot of common framing. Lots of the folks that we were talking to, largely at the staff level at the various counties, were talking about it in a similar way, which is thinking about the importance of production, of housing production more broadly, and thinking specifically about workforce housing and about the linkage between the regional economy and our ability to create good jobs and be able to residents to be able to access those and the location of housing relative to that, and the interplay between having a strong thriving economy and having a housing market that's meeting the needs of workers and residents. Next slide. With that in mind, I feel like we have seen consensus to have the 6 counties, sort of excluding Kendall, so Cook, Kane, Lake, McHenry, DuPage, and Will, come together on a regional application, which is what we are coordinating right now. We would go for the full $10 million chunk of change. With that, a portion, about $3 million, would go to CMAP to provide technical assistance to actually develop the housing readiness plans in Cook, Kane, Lake, and McHenry. You see DuPage is not listed up there. That's because you all are ahead of the game. You already have your contract with Grounded Solutions. And so instead, we would be looking to you and to Will to, when you're working with your contractor for the other thing you've already started, fitting your work within this housing readiness framework. So there is a similar approach that's being taken across the counties, but recognizing that you all made a heads up, proactive decision to already be moving down this road. Then providing what we call next style plan implementation support. So for a few years now, CMAP has been offering, as part of its technical assistance services, direct assistance to municipalities to implement plans at the local level, and doing that focus specifically on housing and looking to do 3 communities a year over 4 years. We do about 12 towns across the region, and do 4 full new unified development ordinances, which towns in DuPage historically have been pretty good about going after. I know we helped the good folks in Villa Park, we helped Bensonville do new unified development ordinances, and a few other places around the region as well. But all are things that we have done in the past. And so those are the assistance that we would provide. The remaining grant, the $7 million, would be available as a county implementation fund. Because while you're doing these county level readiness plans, we know y'all are already setting aside money to be able to implement those, but that we should stack HUD money on top of that and have that ready as well to sort of redouble, to leverage the work that the counties are already doing in terms of being able to implement the recommendations that come out of your housing readiness plan in each of the counties. Next slide. And this is just trying to visualize that a little bit. So the idea is that there would be a housing plan for every one of those counties that's shown in green. There would be implementation assistance, technical assistance available through CMAP, as well as access to the county implementation fund as well. And that those together would create this sort of network that would allow multiple municipalities to be able to jump in, to be able to take action on the things that are being identified in terms of what it means to be housing ready. And then to also have support at the county level for the sort of broader table setting pieces that are really important, whether that's growing the capacity of certain nonprofits or certain programs, whether that is incentivizing or piloting certain types of projects that you'd like to see more of in the future, being able to take those sorts of innovative, interesting steps in the future. Next slide. And that's sort of it. That's all I have. Talk a little bit about the thing we're pursuing. I'm sure there are questions from the group.
Sure. Yes.
So question, you said that of the 10 million, 3 million was going to housing ready for those counties that aren't as up to speed as we are. So I don't want to be penalized because we took went forward on this. So is there any way, since this is federal funding money, grant money, that we can get a portion of that 3 million for our grounded solutions network expenditures that we've incurred?
Yeah, so the big things that I'm thinking about here especially are, one, with all that 3 million also includes the local technical assistance that would be following on activities, which DuPage communities would certainly be eligible for. So leveraging the work that you are already doing. And that's really where we've been thinking about how DuPage is still being able to access the technical assistance money on top of that too.
Yeah, very good. Let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So a lot of the information you provide here is under HUD's calculations of what affordable housing is. And I don't know, I mean, it hasn't been updated and I don't know how long. So that would be step one. Step two would be they do regional calculations. So they don't just do Illinois, it's Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin. They do a regional dump of numbers and then they come out, oh, this is the number that we say is affordable. So that really needs to be kind of honed in on the specific counties that we're talking about. The other part of it is also when HUD does their calculations, they actually penalize those communities that pay higher taxes, real estate taxes. So those communities that have higher real estate taxes get a lower percentage of what they consider affordable under their criteria. So there needs to be a little fairness in all of this, or at least kind of some updating, particularly in the current environment of our economy, so that whatever we're striving for, those numbers actually work, because right now they don't. So I applaud you at CMAP. I remember going to your meetings many years ago. Yeah. So I applaud you guys for stepping up and wanting to pull some money to do some good things. I think the workforce housing portion of it is that's where the real need is right now. The subsidized housing, there's a lot, but they're not printing any more vouchers anyway. So, and that can go across the country. So you can take your voucher anywhere you want in this country. The workforce housing is the one that we're really lacking right now.
Yeah, I think that it's especially helpful to think about, the workforce housing is something we've heard again and again, and this is why I think so much of the HUD focus is on the production aspect of it, so less about how are we attaching subsidy to each individual unit we're creating, but thinking about those broad programmatic structural things that drive what is produced when and where, and recognizing that there's levers that municipalities pull, counties pull in terms of shaping what gets built when and where because of those local controls. Sort of thinking about how that balances and fits together. So absolutely. The other thing that I would sort of say on the funding side of things, I think the really exciting opportunity here is that we are able to bring in resources for the whole of the region. If you looked at those HUD maps, especially some of the municipalities, it's sort of I will say an interesting mix of communities that are pulled together that are very much a result of people looking through national level data and ways that hides a variation and misses local need. And this is why we actually think that a full regional application, right, is part of the reason why we think it's important to include counties like McHenry and Will, and to take a county level approach for the other counties, because, right, it's not just the few municipalities that were shown there on green that have an affordable housing need. The housing market that operates here in DuPage County operates in the region is broader than that. It crosses county boundaries. It operates in all sorts of different ways. And so if there's a role that everyone can play in making that market work. And so that means not following. It means that we want to provide assistance in those priority geographies, but recognizing that to really make an impact, we have to consider the broader spectrum of it.
If you could just talk a little bit about some of our conversations that we've had about the ability with this HUD grant, and that the HUD also recognizes that there likely will be exemptions to some of those typical HUD regulations for this particular grant.
Yeah,
I think that
absolutely.
goes to Member Guston's point.
Absolutely. It's interesting, right? Normally CBG only goes up to 80% of AMI. It's really interesting. They have not said that they will waive the 80% cap on that, but all the language in the narrative writing and other elements, they want to talk about below 100% of AMI, which I think is really interesting, right? They're moving it up into that workforce space. So that is something we continue to talk about as well, as whether or not there are waivers that you would want to seek, that we would want to seek as a group from certain CDBG requirements in order to be able to make use of the funds in ways that best target and meet the local needs here.
Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, and I really do like the regional approach because there's such a need for affordable housing everywhere, right? So as we do it in a regional approach, we're all helping out each other's counties, supporting each other, kind of like how we're doing this economic development regionally. I really think that just this approach, it's something new, and I think it's a great approach because, like I said, if we can get affordable housing in DuPage and it will, and Lake, it helps everybody. It helps all of our communities. I think it's really a great approach. I'm excited about it.
Regional approaches are great, as long as we get more money than
That's
everybody.
right. And just looking at Lake County and Cook County, they get the most
Make sure
of the
we get
money.
more.
I'm like,
Make sure we get more.
And
top liver.
it's great to see that we're a little bit ahead of everybody else right now. Just a little bit, but yeah, it's good.
Okay. Any other questions of Jonathan?
Thanks for our staff.
Thank you to Jonathan. Thank you to the staff. To that end, we're going to move on to the action item. I'll entertain a motion
moved.
to approve AHR 2-23 resolution, AHR 2-23. Resolution to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning and our partner Carroll counties to participate in a competitive granting application to the Department of Housing and Urban Development for their pro-housing notice of funding opportunity, seeking a portion of the $85 million federal grant for the identification and removal of barriers to affordable housing production and preservation. There's a motion and a second. Any further questions, comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. You have a copy of the resolution. I have been handed by Paul Haas a letter from the chair as well as supporting documents, which are going to be given to CMAP, which I am going to give to you, Jonathan, right now and deliver them. So the process is working and now in place. Any old business? Any new business? Okay. I see none. Without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you all.